Okay. All right, last text of Buber, very, very rich text that a lot of you were struggling with. I saw a lot of comments like, what? Why is he talking about God all of a sudden? And, you know, what about atheists, right? How he's not, why is he now kind of funneling all of this, right, into religion, right? So we have to be careful, right? Buber is not talking about religion. Make this note to yourselves. Buber is actually criticizing religion throughout the text, right? Anybody know why he has such distaste for religion?
Oh,
Go ahead, are you talking?
I think I can. I think Buber criticizes religion is because I think religion sort of reduces God to be like sort of a cult, um, it's like a sort of a cult figure, and that um, this has something to do, which sort of um, I guess subverts the spiritual relationship between I's and U's.
Very good, you got it, right? Who are you?
Zabala.
Learn your name. What's oh, Zabala? Okay, very good. That way I get to learn a few of you at least. Okay, very good, Zabala. Right? Religion defines. Right. This is a problem. This is, by the way, not only you, Buber made that observation, but Jaspers. So Jaspers talked about this. Levinas also will see a lot of them. Right. Talk about the problem with religion. It's taking something which is not supposed to be defined and defining it and saying, right, God is like this, God is like that, you need to do this, right? This is the list of things you need to do. And Buber is like, no, God is not anything you can define or understand or know what he wants or not, right? God belongs to the ultimate dimension of the you, right? Which is, by the way, we'll see today, a human dimension. We're going to talk about that, right? So, or which is found within the human, right? We're going to talk about that. So let's be very clear, right? Buber is not going to be talking about religion, nor is he going to be talking about God in a religious sense. So I know some of you wrote in your papers about your allergy to the concept of God, right? And rightly so, right? We have this view of God which has been mediated by the distortions of religion, right? Religions, according to Buber, distort who God is. And we are receiving this distortion, and very commendably, we are reacting negatively to it, right? Buber would be actually quite pleased with our reactions, right? Our kind of allergy to the God of religion. So yeah, so it's very understandable that we have this kind of aversion to God because we have seen God only through the prism of religion, right? So this is not what the God in the sense that Buber is going to talk about today, right? Yes, King, would you like to elaborate a little bit on what you wrote in the chat?
So I was having a lot of like problems with religion in my personal life in that it had too many human influences on it, and sometimes it'd be thrown around and weaponized against each other and used negatively, um and sometimes positively, but a lot of them lose focus of what their goal is, the relation between us and another being, right? And sometimes that just doesn't seem like priority. And also that it because we define religion inherently to this thing that's a being that is so abstract it's hard to put into words what it is or what it does, similar to things that are just out of our realm of knowing it, and trying to put it into a religion is difficult. It shouldn't be possible, you know.
Right, very good, right? So yes, I remember reading about your own aversion, right, to this concept in the reading assignment. So absolutely, right? So before we just, I remember when I taught Buber in the last semester I taught it, there was like a a mutiny in the class, right? Because how dare he, right, bring up this concept? He's ruining everything, right? People were saying actually that he was ruining everything he said up until then. And so this is normal. Why we react like that? Because we have this concept of God, which is what we were taught to see through the religions, right? So what Buber is going to introduce us to is completely different, right? So let's try and see what he really means, right? And maybe then it will be a little bit more easier to digest, right? Especially for secular minds and so forth, to which, by the way, Buber is writing, right? Buber is writing within a secular context. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with one line, which you've all read on page 123. Let's go there right now. The first line, right? Let me make sure all of you are there. First line on 123, hand in the screen. Okay, good. Extended, the lines of relationships intersect in the eternal you. And then he continues, every single you is a glimpse of that. Through every single you, the basic word addresses the eternal you. Okay, so what is he talking about, right? So let me summarize what he's saying. And then we'll go into what it actually means. We'll analyze a little more, right? So first of all, what we're realizing here is that when you are in an IU relationship with anybody, right, with human beings, not talking about God, right? You're in IU, you've succeeded in approaching that person in an IU way. You're therefore revealing their you. Remember, we are responsible, just like Kant said, for revealing the you in the way that we act, right? Make sure you write this down. Let's review that, right? You don't just see the you with your eyes, right? You don't conceptualize the you with your mind. It's how you approach the person, right? In a way that does not define, in a way that keeps hope alive, in a way that doesn't use. We talked about this last time. As you act a certain way towards a person, you reveal in them the dimension of the you, right? So it's your actions which are now revealing this dimension. If you don't act that way, nothing appears. The person is just an it, right? Okay, now what Buber is saying here is as you reveal the dimension of the you, as you open up the dimension of the you in front of you, you are actually accessing a deeper dimension, right? Which is the dimension of you-ness in general. So in other words, I think a lot of you explained it very nicely by going back to Kant, right? The human being opens up the realm of the noumenal, right? Remember there was the phenomenal, right? That everything you see, you touch and so forth. And then there's the noumenal, which is the realm that we cannot see, feel or touch, but that we access through respect, through morality. You access that realm, right? You access this personhood of the person, right? This is what Buber is saying. Every human being, when they are a you, they're like a window onto this whole dimension that they're just at that moment giving you a glimpse of, right? They're a window onto the greater you, right? With a capital Y, right? So this is what he's saying, right? Now let me, in other words, as you're connecting to a human you, you are at the same time connecting to the ultimate you, which Buber gives the name God, right? But doesn't need to. So you can see, so I want to clarify a few things that some of you wrote in your paper. So number one, anyone can do this. You don't have to be religious to do this. On the contrary, the less religious you are, the better capable you are of doing this, because religion puts definitions. If you're secular, or even better, agnostic, right? Agnostic is the person who doesn't know, who knows they don't know, agnostic, right? Gnosis, which means knowledge in Greek, you don't know. Agnosticism, right, is the best approach. If you're agnostic, you're the best person to have this encounter, right? So you don't have to be religious. You don't have to be a Jew or a Christian or a Buddhist to encounter the eternal you. That's the first thing I want to say. Anytime you are encountering a human you through your actions, you are by that token, by extension, encountering the ultimate you, which is this whole dimension that the human being is giving you a glimpse of, right? So you don't have to believe in God at all. You can go around saying, I don't believe in God, and still implicitly be connecting to the eternal you by the way you treat people. So let's imagine a Christian, right, or a Jew. They don't have a sense, they don't know how to encounter people as yous. Will they ever know God according to Buber? Even if they go to the synagogue and the church and they pray and they read the scripture, do they have any type of encounter with God according to Buber? What do you think? In other words, can you have an encounter with God if you cannot have an encounter with people? That's the question. What do you think Buber is saying here?
No.
Okay, very good. Yes, there's like a bunch of you raise their heads. King, go ahead. And then whoever else.
I think Buba is saying that, well, you said it, that if through your actions and interactions with others, you could achieve like this closeness to God by, viewing them respectfully, not as objects, and having meaningful relations.
Yeah, that's the idea. Right now, what if you don't have meaningful relationships? Can you still access God outside of any type of human relationship? Kogan, what do you think? Kogan, go ahead.
Well, there is this this idea that God is found within others, within our actions toward others, and many books in the Hebrew Bible, specifically in the section of the Hebrew Bible called Prophets, has many minor prophets. They have books that chastise the Jewish people, the Israelites at the time, and they say we donate to the temple and we bring sacrifices and and we observe the holidays and the prophets of those books, they tell the people, God doesn't want your sacrifices. God wants you to take care of the orphan and the widow and the stranger and the poor. God wants you to be kind to other people, to not gossip, so on and so forth. So there is this idea of God doesn't necessarily want your sacrifices. God wants you to be kind to other people and to do well by other people. But the important thing that's distinguished is that any religion can do that. So there are what distinguishes, let's say, one religion from another is not the kindness the kindness that is found with their laws, but the rituals that are found within their laws. So you have the aspects of the religion that have to do with the religion, and then you have the aspects of the religion that have to do with God.
Okay, very good, right? So absolutely, you have what Buber is talking about is also taught, right, in Judaism, except here that I would add a little nuance to what you were saying. Since Buber is not talking about religion, he might argue that anyone in this world, if they are capable of the I-you relationship, can connect to this eternal you, right? Even if they bypass the rituals and the commandments and the prayers and so forth, right? This is very, very new idea, right, at the time. And by the way, Levinas will make similar argument, right? So that's here the idea, right? Now, to answer to another one of your papers, right? This is not about using human beings to get to God, right? I think that was Kang's paper, right? This is not about using human beings to get to God, kind of like in Plato, you use human beings to get to the forms, right? You're not using human beings. As soon as you use human beings, by the way, you cannot get to God, first of all, right? Because you're in the I-it, so it's blocked, right? So what he's simply saying is that as you encounter with human beings as a you, meaning you're not using them, precisely, right? You're accessing this dimension, right? You are, in a way, the person becomes this window onto this dimension, onto the eternal you, right? And of course, right, Buber and some of you were annoyed that there was no argument for the existence of God. You can't, right? The eternal you, because it's a you, You can't go around proving and defining and explaining, right? That's going back to an it. Any type of proof of the existence of God is treating God like an it. Do you see how not only religion, but philosophy has reduced the eternal you into an it? And Buber is going in a completely different direction. It's not the God of the philosophers, it's not the God of the religions, it's something else altogether. It's a dimension that we access through our interactions, which he names God, but doesn't have to, right? So that's the idea. Okay, have I responded to some of you, right? I think I was responding to King, to Kang, King Kong today. Who have I responded to? Both of you, at least for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the wording, like that people become windows to the eternal, it's still in my mind, sounds like kind of using them to get to something else. But I understand what you're saying, how that's
Right.
distinct from still.
As soon as you, I mean, for example, right, you can be a window onto what is a woman, right? You as an individual personal woman can be a window onto womanhood in general, right? Or you can be a window onto your culture, right? So it's not that I'm gonna like, it's just we can't help it. Right? We are expressing this, right? So as people encounter us, they encounter not only me as a woman, but womanhood in general, right? Or my culture in general. So it's not that you're gonna use, right? Because again, as soon as you use, you're back in the I it, right? This is simply, you are getting a glimpse of it, whether you want to or not, right? That's the idea. Okay, so now let's look a little bit, right? Why does Buber talk about this ultimate you, or the eternal you, as being accessed through the particular you, right, of the human being? So there's two main reasons, right? Well, first of all, the main reason for that is he is seeing simply that when you describe the you are really describing this dimension of God. So for example, when you say the you cannot be used, cannot be known, cannot be defined, right? This is how God has been described, right? In the history of philosophy, in the history, right? When he's rightly described, right? That you cannot describe, right? You cannot define, you cannot use, you cannot possess, right? This you. That's why he's making this connection, right? He's realizing, wow, this is like exactly how God reveals himself as that which cannot be described, controlled, possessed, right? Remember when we did page 55, right? What is the you? No borders. The you is not something, right? That's why he's seeing that the two dimensions are of the same nature. That's why he's saying the you of the human being gives us access onto the eternal you. They are the same substance in a way. Substance is, again, is not a good word because substance is an actual defined thing. They're the same dimension, I would say, right? Just like the noumenal, right? Or the good that in Kant, right? I access the noumenal realm through the ethics, through respecting another human being. I don't use them, boom, I reveal the good, or the noumenal is the same thing, right? You're accessing the noumenal realm is the same dimension. Am I clear so far? I just want to make sure. Everybody with me? Put your hands. Okay, good. All right, so now I want to go a little deeper. Buber goes a little deeper beyond this kind of negative theology, right? Remember, negative theology has to do with not knowing God, right? You cannot know. You can only know what he is not, right? So Buber is going to go actually beyond that. And I want to go into this quote, which I'm going to first talk about in terms of human beings and then in terms of God. Okay, so this is a quote found on page 124, which I want to focus on because very powerful quote actually. Okay, where is it? It says, the you confronts me. Now, here it is. Last two lines on page 124. Are you there, everybody? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. The you confronts me. Okay, so now this is a little different than the you escapes me, right? For now, we saw that the you cannot define, cannot know, cannot possess, right? And this is all how the you escapes me. But now we have something new. We have another idea. The you confronts me. Okay, so I want to talk about this a little bit. By the way, Levinas is going to develop this idea that the you challenges and confronts me, and you know you're in relationship with the you when you feel threatened. Right? So that's very important. Remember this quote, right? And Levinas will elaborate on this. So let's look at that, right? First of all, we are learning something here about connecting to human beings. And then we will extrapolate and see what does it mean then to connect to God in that way, right? So first of all, what we are realizing here with Buber, with regards to just our interhuman relationships, is that you know you're with a you when you are allowing that person to challenge you, right? To move you out of your comfort zone, to take from you, to threaten you, right? Anytime you feel threatened, by the way, by whether it's a religion or a culture or a gender, right? Or a sexual orientation, anytime you feel threatened, you know at that moment, there's a you trying to enter your realm, right? The sign that there is a you is that it is actually putting you out of your comfort, right? Let me look at this quote here. Yeah, go to 126 to go in even deeper in that, right? And so before I go to 126, to really welcome this you is to really accept the discomfort and yet still relate. Too often, by the way, we choose to relate only with people that make us comfortable. As soon as we start to feel discomfort, we cut them off, right? As soon as the situation becomes uncomfortable or we feel somehow threatened, right? We are immediately tempted to cut off that person, right? What Buber is saying, however, is the ability to welcome this discomfort and this threatening situation and this challenge, right, is really another facet of entering into an IU relationship, right? So let's look at how he says that. 126, the second paragraph, last sentence. What has to be given up? Are you there? Hand in the screen. Okay. Right, so he says this, right? What has to be given up. So in other words, what Buber is saying is that when you're in an IU relationship, it's not just about recognizing how different and how, no definition. It's also about giving up something, right? Giving up your comfort, giving up your stability. And he says this, right? What has to be given up is not the I. Okay, so make sure you get this, right? Because many times we think I have to give up my I to be in this situation. It's like, no. What you're giving up is the false drive for self-affirmation. In other words, there is a higher I than the I which wants to affirm itself and push the other away, right? This is a low I. So anytime you're in a threatening or uncomfortable situation and you want to affirm yourself and push the other away, this is not the highest I, right? The highest I is this I. This is the I which is capable, right, of standing their ground in the face of, I'm reading now, from the unreliable, the unsolid, the unlasting, the unpredictable, the dangerous world of relation, right? In other words, the true I is the I that is capable of taking a stand, even though there is no solid ground, no reliability, don't know if it's gonna last, it's unpredictable and it's dangerous, right? This choice to dwell in this difficult, challenging situation is a sign that you've chosen to be in an IU relationship, right? So you can see that the IU is not easy, right? It takes a certain kind of guts and audacity and courage to stand in a relationship which is unpredictable, threatening, uncomfortable, and so forth, right? And Buber is saying you're not giving up your I at that moment. You're living your I on a different level, right? You're not living your I as self-affirmation. You're living your I as giving up, right? This is also an I stance. I choose to give up. I choose to go through this, right? Am I making sense? This is maybe I should give you examples so you can see what I'm talking about, right? This is the I that chooses to stand by a friend, for example, with whom we don't agree anymore, right? Or a child, right? You have a child or a friend that you're like, I don't agree with your lifestyle anymore. I don't agree with what you're doing. I'm not comfortable with this, right? And yet you're there, right? This is the relationship where things are going badly, things are turning sour, and yet you decide, I'm gonna stick with this. And this choice is an I choice. You're not relinquishing your I, you are relinquishing the false drive for self-affirmation, right? So anytime you choose to stick out a difficult relationship, you are entering the encounter with the you. You are at that moment connecting with that person as a you and not as an it. Am I making sense so far? You can put your hand in the screen if I'm making sense. Any questions with what I'm saying? Okay, now, okay, so this is, right, one of the challenges of relationships, and we'll see it gets even worse with Levinas, because for Levinas, we'll see that the structure of the IU is sacrifice. Like, he straight up says it like that. He's like, you can't be in an IU, or he doesn't say it like that, but he says you can't be with a true other if you're incapable of sacrifice, right? And again, sacrifice doesn't mean giving up yourself. When you sacrifice, you're offering yourself. It's different from, right? See the difference between victimhood and sacrifice, right? Sacrifice, the I is very strong. The I is offering. Victimhood, there's no I, crushed, right? So we'll talk more, of course, about that later, right? Okay, so so let's now extrapolate, right? To actually, yeah, let's extrapolate, since running out of time. Let's extrapolate to God, right? Because this is very, very similar. Good. So first of all, what we're getting from this, that the you, okay, Waishi? Yes, go ahead, Waishi, speak to us.
You said how, like, you were explaining how Buber was like, oh, it's about sacrifice, you have to, like, be in this discomfort zone, but where is that limit? Like, what do you mean by how much discomfort can the person take? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, say you had a friend, right? They were your best friend, but then they started to not care about you, but you were giving them so many options. They go behind your back, they talk about you, they do this and that, but you're still trying, you are trying to communicate, but they're not communicating back. Should we still stay with that relationship, like Buber is saying, or is that the limit?
So part of, right, relating, right? So imagine a difficult relationship where you feel the other is done with you. Part of the IU would be to accept that, right? You don't try to stay latched on to the other. So there are relationships where the IU is going to prescribe you to let go. If the other person is done with you and you're hanging on, you're not in an IU, you're in an I-it, right? So on that level, for instance, when you feel like the other person has moved on and you're still trying to be nice and so forth, so that's one aspect. But there's another aspect where, you know, the other's still there, still wants to be with you, but they're difficult to live with. They're, you know, you're feeling threatened, right? To a certain degree, they might be somewhat abusive, somewhat impatient with you, and so forth. Buber here is saying, right, he's not saying, again, that you have to become a victim. You to be with the you, so he doesn't say it specifically, right? But I think you have to have an I to be in an IU, right? So you do need, to a certain degree, also, I think Kant is clearer on that, right? Have self-respect for there to be a true IU. You can't have an IU relationship where you are in an it, right? Does that make sense? That's it you.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
yeah.
You have to, in a way, fight for the I also, to not degenerate into an it. Otherwise, you're in an I-it relationship where they're the I and you're the it.
Oh, okay.
Right? So for there
Yeah.
to be an I, you have to protect your I. or your you-ness, right? And you have to, and you can actually, by the way, even within a challenging relationship, it is possible to stand up for your you-ness, right? Over and over again, and choose to be there, even though it's difficult, but you have a responsibility to not degenerate into an it. Otherwise, you're not in an I anymore, right? So in that level, right, both the self and the other need to be very protected, right, in the IU relationship. Does that make sense, Waishi?
Yes, thank you. I get it.
Very good. So yes, so Buber seems to be, right, like a dangerous thought, but no, it's difficult, but it's not a real threat, right? If you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, you are standing up for yourself for the sake of the IU relationship. You're not allowing yourself to degenerate into an it for the sake of the IU relationship you're trying to protect. So really the shift is, there's a shift of emphasis. Instead of protecting the I, you are now protecting the IU. This is very important. Make sure you write this down. It's no more about protecting the I. Oh, I'm going to protect myself. Move away. Go away. Right? You're threatening me. No, because the I without the you doesn't exist. Remember, the I without the you is nothing. It's the you that makes you a real I. Right? So the goal here is to shift from protecting just the I by itself, which really reduces it to a very small, constricted it. Right? You want to really shift to protecting the IU, which means protecting the dignity of the other, but also your own dignity. Kant would put it like that, right? That's how you protect the IU. Am I making sense? This is so important, right, to understand, especially if you're like in an abusive, quote unquote. See, psychology is always going against all of that we're doing here. Psychology always putting labels. I am in an abusive relationship. I am with a narcissist. And then there's like no hope, right? So I don't like to say abusive because that's another label, but I will say, suppose you're in a difficult relationship where you're not comfortable, to be honest. And you might even feel, by the way, threatened, right, by the other person. You have a responsibility, not so much to yourself, but to the relationship. That's how Buber wants us to see it. How can you protect the IU in this situation? Sometimes protecting the IU means you leave because you're disintegrating. Right? If you're in a relationship, is it raining? Because I put my laundry outside and it's stressing me out. Okay, where was that? Yes, sorry, I'm so sorry. This is an important moment. It's not about protecting the I, right? It's about protecting the IU. And so sometimes, to be honest, to protect, if you feel yourself disintegrating and you're becoming an it, sometimes you have to take a step back and take, and maybe leave the relationship and so forth. But the IU means you always keep the hope open, even if you're living in a different house, right? The IU means you always believe in the other, right? The IU means you're not only protecting yourself, you're protecting the other. You're in a way trying or disciplining yourself not to put borders on them, right? Am I making sense? This should help now for difficult relationships. And are you good? I'm waiting to hear from Coco. I need to be hearing from Coco at this moment. Why am I not? I'm already anticipating what you're going to say. Am I making sense, Coco? Because you're the one who is usually struggling with this idea when I bring it up in my classes. Would you like to say a few words, or are you? You're good.
I prefer to remain silent for the most part.
Okay, very good, Coco. No worries. All right, excellent. So this is the first thing, right, that we see. Now, there's a second thing which is very, very powerful, is this notion. So yeah, so first of all, right, I don't feel like I've gotten to God yet. Sorry, we were still with the IU, with a human being. So if we see that the you confronts me now on the level of connecting to the eternal you, right? You have the same notion that God is not, and by the way, this is such a great answer to Nietzsche's criticism of religion, right? Nietzsche goes around, if you recall, in The Twilight of the Idols, one of Nietzsche's main issues with religion, especially Christianity in his case, is that God is just a crutch that you use because you're weak and you're helpless and you need to believe in this, otherwise you're going to crumble up and die, right? So this is very powerful because we're seeing here a different type of God, right? This is not the God who comforts you and makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel like breathe a sigh of relief that everything will be taken care of. This is a God who challenges you, right? We are not here in the context of religion where God is comforting you, where God is helping you, where God is making you prosperous. I'm thinking of, you know, the whole aisle of Christian books in Barnes and Nobles is about how God can make you rich, how God can give you the love of your life, how God can do this, do that, do this, do that. We're not there with the eternal you, right? The eternal you confronts us, right? And so we're dealing here with a different type of God than the God of the religions. We're dealing here more with the God of the book of Job, if you're familiar with that book, right? Which is, and I invite you to read it, and you will see there a God which is not there to cater to human beings, to make you feel safe. This is a God who also puts you in challenging situations, causes suffering, so we can be broken, so we can grow, so we can be humbled, right? This is the kind of God we are dealing with here, if the you confronts me. So this is just kind of a way to go beyond the perspective of religions, right? We see God kind of like sweet baby Jesus, right? To be, no offense, right? The very nice God, always helping you, a nice bearded God, right? No, we are here dealing with a God who will make you go through hell if that's what you need, right? And we've all had those experiences, but then instead of recognizing that here's a moment of healthy confrontation, we get frustrated, we get angry, and so forth, right? So we have this notion here also. I mean, look here on page 130, the way he describes a possible encounter with the eternal you. In a way that's rather unpleasant, to be honest. Go to page 130 and you are on where it says creation, second to last paragraph, creation happens to us. Everybody there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay, right? It's talking about being a creature. Creation happens to us, burns into us, changes us. We tremble and swoon, we submit, right? Life does this to us. What he's talking about is the way life treats us. Page 130, second to last paragraph, right? Life is not necessarily going to be your mom unless you have a dragon mom, right? Life happens to you, it burns into you, it changes you, you tremble, and there are moments in life where you are trembling. It's so hard, right? You are swooning, you are surrendering, right? At that moment he's talking, this is the eternal you entering your dimension, right? You are being challenged at that moment, right? Okay, so that's the first thing, right? The you confronts us. Now, and in a way, the you, while confronting us, transforms us, right? These things we go through in our lives, right? That are beyond us, that overwhelm us. Buber is saying these are manifestations of the eternal you, right? Let me say that again, right? Anytime you're in your life and you feel overwhelmed by what is going on, and there's too much craziness going on, and you can't deal with all of the pain anymore you're going through, right? This is a manifestation of the eternal you, which is in a way confronting you, burning into you, changing you. This is really a philosophy of suffering that he's really talking about, right? Anytime we're dealing with these painful situations, this is the eternal you burning into you, changing you, before whom you must submit in a certain degree. You can't do anything about the situation, right? So on the one hand, right, God changes us, or the eternal you changes us. But on the other hand, and this is so interesting, do I have time for this? Yes. On the other hand, you also have this notion of God needing us, right? So this is a very interesting point on page 130 also. Go to the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, that you need God. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. Right. So notice, by the way, he's moving between the God of religions, moving between philosophy and religion, right? He's in a way talking first to philosophers when he talks about the eternal you, but then when he's talking about God, he is kind of broadening the view of God that a religious person might have. Do you see how he's speaking to both? He's sliding. Everybody senses the way he's sliding back and forth. On the one hand, eternal you, speaking philosophical language. On the other hand, God, right? But it's a different God than what the religions teach. He's speaking now to a religious audience. So he keeps on sliding back and forth, right? Between these two audiences. So you have to kind of like be pretty, what's the word? Supple, right? To follow. So he says this, right? That you need God more than anything you know at all times in your heart, speaking to a religious audience, right? But don't you know also that God needs you, right? So what does this mean that God needs us? What does he mean by that? If we are in an IU relationship, what does it mean that God needs us? If the relationship with God is an IU relationship. Anybody have any ideas what this means? That God needs us. This is an idea you won't find in the religions, right? Usually in the religion, it's I need God and I have to do all this to get his attention, right? So no, God actually needs you too. Why? Anybody know?
Could I jump in, Professor?
Yes, go ahead, Sosa.
Well, if we're thinking of like the IU relationship, we have to see the value in the certain being. So God would need us and see us as who we are, see us as important, see us as, you know, human beings, but more so as souls. If we see God as important, God should see us as important as well. It would be like a loving relationship.
Right, absolutely, right? In other words, God depends on us to be revealed as a you and not as an it. This is what he's saying, right? God depends on us in this world to be revealed as a you and not just as an it. In other words, it's how we connect to God, the way we connect, right? Speaking now in the religious context, right? If you connect to God as an it, God is going to be an it, right? Meaning he's there, you possess him, you understand him, you define him, he's there for you, he's your crutch, and so forth, right? But if you learn to connect to God as a you will get a whole new vision of God, right? So in a way, God depends on us to be manifest as an it or as a you, right? The reason God is never almost manifest as an eternal you in the way that we learned it is that most of us turn to God as an it, right? Speaking now strictly in a religious context, right? We're turning to God as an it, and so God now is a big it in the sky who is there to cater to our needs, right? And so in a way, we will never really have an encounter with God as the eternal you until we shift our attitude, right? God depends on us to be revealed in his you-ness, just like another human being depends on us to be revealed in their you-ness, right? So in many ways, right, God needs us to be truly himself or to be revealed as truly you, right? Am I making sense, or did I go over somebody's head? Put your hand in the screen if you're making sense. Okay, who am I not making sense to? That in a way, God as a you, as the eternal you, depends on how we turn to him, right? If we turn to him as an it, give me this, give me that, give me this, then we're just gonna see it. We're never gonna truly encounter the you of God, right? We have to actually shift our approach God as a you for us to have a vision, a much deeper vision of who God is as a you and not just as an it. Kang, go ahead, Kang.
So does the idea of God as the creator, is that like an it relation? Because you imagine that God existed first and then created humanity?
Yeah, this is, I mean, Buber talks about the creator, right? But this is him slipping between the two dimensions, right? Anytime you say anything about God, right, you're falling in the level of the it, which is a dangerous level, which is why some religions try, right, when they talk about God, for example, in Judaism, there is the notion that you cannot at least read the name of God, right? You're not allowed to read the name. When they see the name written in the scrolls, they say something else. I don't know if you've been to a synagogue, they do that, right? So religions are aware of the conundrum they're in. On the one hand, they have to teach something, they have to reveal something, but how do you do it without, right, making God into an it? This is the difficulty and the challenge of a religion, and that's what Buber is trying to do. He's moving within the realm of religion when he's talking about the creator, God, and so forth, but he's at the same time trying to undo those categories. That's how you have to do it, right? So if you're going to be speaking in the context of religion, you have to be constantly careful. You're using a word, but you know it's so much more. It has to be, right? Kang, does that help you a little bit?
So to sum up, so religion's challenge is to teach things about God, but not limit God to what they're teaching.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what most religions are not capable of doing, right? They teach and they say, that's it. No, you have to say, here's the beginning. Here's the first step. There's so much more. Be aware that God could be the opposite of what I just taught you. If religions were capable of saying that God at any moment could appear as the opposite of what I just said, we would be moving much further along, right, in our spiritual journeys. So the problem with religion is they crystallize, they stay with the rigid categories they use to teach. But what Buber is saying is we have to constantly, if we are speaking a religious language, undo what we just said. Or say it in a way that it's fluid, permeable, open, right? Otherwise you fall into the it. This is the danger of religion. Any type of teaching, by the way, right? I'm teaching you Buber. I'm doing a bunch of it right now. I'm itizing to explain, right? So that's the danger. You have to explain while at the same time not explaining. You have to say while not saying. This is the challenge, I think, of religion. Better, Kang? Kang? Oh, where is Kang?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes.
No, better? Okay. All right, now the quote of the end, page 141. Okay, second paragraph. All doctrines of immersion. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. All doctrines of immersion. He's talking here. Okay, so he has spent a good deal of time criticizing Buddhism. Couple words on that, right? If I had been Buber, I would have been more careful before judging Buddhism. I think Parillo made this observation, right? You don't know, by the way, these Eastern religions, you don't know them until you've practiced them, right? There is no concept. You have to do it. You have to do the practices of meditation and so forth to understand what they're talking about. So any type of criticism coming from a Western mindset, right, who hasn't done these practices, you cannot take those seriously, right? So Buber is really conceptualizing Buddhism in his own way, which I don't know if it's a fair judgment, right, to be honest. But what he means by doctrines of immersion is the idea, which Westerners have of Eastern religions, that God is within, or that you can access God by yourself meditating on a mountain, right? Okay, so again, right, that's the perspective of Westerners of Eastern religions, that they can be by themselves, isolated, detached from human relations, and connecting to God, right, in this kind of strictly personal way. So he has an issue with this. Now, I don't know whether this is actually the case, right, in Eastern religions, but whatever I just described, he has an issue with this, right? Because for Buber, and we saw this already, and we're reading here now in the text, the delusion, right? So all doctrines of immersion are based on the gigantic delusion that a human spirit bent back into itself. Oh, delusion of a human spirit bent back into itself. The delusion that spirit occurs in man. In truth, it occurs from man, between man and what he is not. We talked about this when we said the life of the spirit is, how did we say it last time? We had a different quote saying the same thing. What did I say? One of you said it in your paper. The life of the spirit is between us. Remember this quote? Where was it? 85?
Yeah, it's like the breath between
Yes,
people. It's like
85.
that air that we
That's
breathe.
it. Thank you. Yes, page 89, right? Where is it? Yes, spirit is not in the I, but between I and you, page 89. Same idea, right? This is so powerful. I want you to remember this, right? For Buber, there can be no spiritual life by yourself, right? The spiritual life occurs in relationships, because that is how you access the eternal you for Buber. So he has really brought religion or spirituality down to ethics, something which Levinas will also do. There is no solitary spiritual life for Buber, not really, right? You're still, he would call it the I, right? If you're just with yourself and whoever or whatever, right? For him, the true life of the spirit is always found at the contact of another human being. That's where you can connect to the eternal thou. You cannot connect to the eternal you by yourself, because spirit is between, right? That's the idea. So that's very important, right? Especially in the political context where he is, where I don't know if you recall, but you had, right, when the Nazis came to power, we talked about this already, right? They had this idea that God is with us, while at the same time, right, gassing millions and millions of people, right? And the church, by the way, for the most part, not all of it, but for the most part in Germany, was continuing its worship services while turning a blind eye to what was going on, right, in the camps. This is what Buber is saying to them, right? He's saying, you think you can still be religious by yourself in your church by turning a blind eye to what is going on? No, there's no spirit in such a church, right? Which is completely just looking at God, right? And ignoring the reality of other human beings. This is the context. Buber is addressing this mentality that you can still be religious and deeply faithful to God while turning a blind eye to what is happening to other human beings, right? That's the target audience of this quote, right? You cannot be truly a Christian or truly a Jew or truly a Muslim if you are incapable of seeing the human beings around you and of connecting to them as a you and not as an it, right? Don't think you can have some kind of personal VIP connection with God. That's what he's saying, right? There is no VIP, personal, intimate by yourself, right? According to Buber, right? This is a very Jewish idea. Christianity would beg to differ, I think. So that's the idea. Okay, very good. Any questions? There's such a rich text, so much to say, could go on and on. Any questions on this text, on anything that we did so far? Okay, good. So I just want to see Coco at the end. I'll put up your questions like this weekend, and then you will be discussed. You can already prepare, right, for yourself. You'll discuss them in the group on Wednesday, and then you'll write your paper. You'll pick one. I mean, I will pick one. I'll pick one or two from those, and then you'll do it and hand it in this next weekend. Okay, let me stop the recording.